You straight up cuckooed that dude, bro. Oh my God.
You've got all your Charger gear on because
I look good. I got big energy every day. Let's go!
And he is dicked.
Blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while.
That's right.
You have to love what you're seeing on tape if you're a Chargers fan, especially for the future with Justin Herbert.
On the move and throws and touchdown.
Players, coaches, staff, fans, together we can create something truly special.
Stay tuned for some good content.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Charger Chat. I'm your co-host, Wolldog, sitting with my buddies, Kev, Hug, and Duggan.
I panicked. I had something planned to say here, but I panicked.
Oh, God. Deer in the headlights.
Shit.
Kev, Hug, and Duggan. Well, let's turn it over to Kyle, the coach, Duggan. What do you got?
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Also prepared.
All right. Well, folks, welcome to another Friday episode of the Charger Chat. Lots to talk about still, and we've got a great coach's classroom, Bolt Inside, all lined up for you guys, ready and raring to go. But first and foremost, we want to talk about a little article that was written, came from Haley Elwood, as we all know Haley for the Chargers, released a new article recently called Brandon Staley on wanting the offense to run through Justin Herbert.
See.
What a concept. What an idea.
Did she say tailored or built around?
Run through, which I would say
through.
is close to Taylor.
Built around? Oh, okay.
I'm going to have to go tailored, yeah.
All right,
Sorry,
we'll see.
Let's
Let's get into the
on to that
article.
narrative.
Justin Herbert,
see what
he's
else
an
is said in
existing
the
pair
article.
of pants. We're just going to tailor
We're going to
everything.
run through those pants.
That's right.
Clean them up a little bit.
And
put
make
them
brand
back
new
on.
ones.
Out of the existing ones.
Let's
That's how
see
you
what the article
tailor.
says. Let's see what the article says.
So, let's see. So Brandon Staley was on the Athletic Football Show and discussed a wide range of topics like his football philosophy and what he's implementing on the Bolts. We want them to have to identify a lot of stuff in the back end, especially after the snap. We always want those guys having to work each and every snap in terms of an identification standpoint, and I think that's where the modern NFL is headed.
How much of that is done, like in our previous defense, was like decided right when the ball was snapped? Like this is, like well beforehand.
I think that's one of the options, right? One of the options is don't overcomplicate it. You don't have to identify where every single player is and what is this probability if they line up here. It's, hey, we're going to make this so simple, just go play. And that's clearly not where the NFL is headed. And that's kind of what Staley's saying. Last year it was, hey, no matter who's where or what happens when, line up and play. And that's why Drew Tranquil ran down the field with fastest guy in the NFL.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Exciting. I'm glad we're going in this direction. Even if it's more complicated, I think they can do it. I'm feeling confident
they're professionals.
They're
professionals at what they do.
That's right. Let's let them do their thing.
Let's hit each other. I don't know if it's about really diagnosing stuff, but we'll find out.
There's a science
feeling confident.
There's a science
feeling confident.
But now that he's overseeing the whole operation, Staley admits he enjoys being able to impact all three phases of the game, complementary systems in all three phases of the game. The offense never left me.
Cute. That's so sweet.
That's so sweet.
It's just in his heart still. He just loves offense.
You just can't let it go. I can't quit you.
Reunited at last.
But
it feels so good.
That idea of complementary football, right? It's like, if you're going to be aggressive on defense, be aggressive on offense, be aggressive on special teams. Take chances if that's what you're going to do. So having one guy at the helm, and I think we all assume, hey, Gus Bradley was super conservative, didn't change a lot of stuff. Maybe that's just what Coach Lynn wanted. You know, like we had a very conservative offensive approach as well and special teams. So it does really all flow through the head coach, and he hopefully that mindset is able to help all three phases of the game.
It will, at the very least, be different than what we've seen.
I think that's a really good point, though, looking at maybe Lynn's culture of what he wanted was more of a conservative thing. That's why you went out and got Tyrod Taylor, and you didn't go splash and try and get Tom Brady. It's just a different approach, and it seems a little more reserved, and let's run the ball until it doesn't work anymore and keep doing it. Let's be reserved, and I'm glad that we don't have that anymore.
That's right. It is no longer an issue. And then the quote that came from Staley, I wanted our offense to run through Justin Herbert. I wanted him to make it work, and I think that's what's been fun to sort of get started. I think that ultimately the most dangerous quarterbacks to defend are the ones that become the system. studying the great players that have played that position and guys I've looked up to from a coaching standpoint, like Jimmy Johnson, Bill Belichick, Pete Carroll, Mike Tomlin, Jim Harbaugh, Bill Parcells, is a guy that since I was a little kid, I've always admired. Their quarterbacks have all played really, really well. And the quarterbacks have had continuity with their head coach, and they've had continuity with their systems. I think that's something a defensive coach can provide, and hopefully I can provide it to our team. Not just to Justin Herbert, but to our team. Provide that other side, that extra education that hopefully can sort of complete their thinking and help us be the team we're capable of being. Dude.
In the eternal words of Jerry Maguire, you complete me.
You complete me.
I have a question on what you guys think this means. He said that he hopes to be able to provide offensive continuity as a defensive coach, right? I think that's something question. A defensive coach can provide. How is that? Like, I feel like that's the opposite, right? Like, he has an offensive background. We all know that. And he clearly before this said that he likes having an influence on the offense, but that almost sounds contradictory a little bit. Like,
I think it's interesting because the defensive coach and defense in general is reactionary. So you're having to like not only know exactly what the offense is going to do, but you got to react to it and then prepare for it. And then if you have a former quarterback that's offensive minded as well, it might allow him to see more of these different facets of the game. And I think that's maybe where it come from. Maybe offensive minded coach is really offensive minded and hasn't done too much defensive scheming. It's just a thought.
Yeah. I guess
debate,
it's like
debate.
No. Yeah, it's a good. What I just listening to you talk, my brain was working, and I guess
I'm glad it could help.
It could be like a
doesn't always go that way.
Say you bring in an offensive head coach.
Kyle's trying to just steamroll through that. Right.
I'm like, hey, give me some time to think. Just spit something out of your mouth, Kevin. Here's what I kind of think is maybe what he was saying is I'm not an offensive minded head coach is going to come in with my style and it's my way or the highway. I'm more of a defensive minded coach, but I am the head coach, so I get the final say. So I can bring in coordinators that I know will allow the offense to run through Justin and not just come and bring in what they do and run what they do. Maybe that's what he's trying to get at with a defensive head coach can bring continuity to the offense.
Yeah, I don't know how to necessarily take it either, but to me, with the game consistently changing and with defenses playing against very specific offenses, they're prepping for different offenses every game. Maybe it's that aspect of the preparation, maybe keeping that consistent as far as making sure that those, you're checking off all the boxes every week. You're not just going, okay, this is the game plan, and we're going to do this game plan every single week, regardless of who we play against. This is our game plan, and we need to make sure that we are ready in all of these boxes for each individual team.
Right.
I don't know.
I think those are all good points. Those all could influence this continuity that we're hoping for and creating a new offense around Justin Herbert, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting too, because when we were going into this coaching conversation, they were always talking about like, oh, we need an offensive minded guy, offensive minded this, offensive minded that. But if you really look at it, like a defensive minded coach is attacking and defending at the same time. They're trying to go after the ball and defend it. So I know it's a very rudimentary, simple way to look at it, but I think I'm not going to give you any props, Kyle, but I think a defensive minded play caller has a bit more work to do than just trying to scheme and attack a defense.
Yeah, you do have to roll with what they're doing. They kind of dictate what
they
you
decide.
Have to do.
You have to be able to go with the flow, which I think as a head coach, that's what you want.
Right. Yeah. You got to be able to make changes on the flow and be able to see what they're doing and make adjustments. Hopefully
that
and that's what we want
too.
in a head coach.
That's what we
make adjustments. Try things at halftime that are different if they don't work, or adjust them so they don't know how to come back after halftime and kick our ass. So that's my goal.
That's all we want. That's all we want.
We just don't want to get our ass kicked.
Just don't kick my ass.
Leave my ass alone, man. All right. Well, there you go, folks. That's check it out. Haley Elwood, that article, Brandon Staley on wanting the offense to run through Justin Herbert. And now it's time to look on over to our Bolt Insight for the week. Kevin's got a great one lined up. Let's go see who it is.
Booyah, you doing good?
Your ass is mine. When it ends, you can have it back.
Feels good. Talk to some Charger fans.
Man, are we lucky to have the one and only. All right, guys, we're here with another Bolt Insight, and we are super pumped to have Tyler Lawrence from the Shock Therapy Podcast. What is going on, Tyler?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm pumped, man. I'm good. It's good to finally meet you and chat with you. So, and when we have somebody on new for the first time, we always do this. It's just kind of a tradition. How did you become a Charger fan?
Yeah, man. So I grew up in Yucaipa, California, which is kind of like in the Inland Empire. And I didn't start playing football till high school, but we were the Yucaipa Thunderbirds, and our colors were very similar, very much the same. And it was kind of the closest team to me. And at that time, you were talking about 2009 when, LaDainian Tomlinson, Antonio Gates, Phillip Rivers, you had that trio, and, they were good at the time. And I hadn't really picked the team up till then, but it just seemed like it fit. And we had a lot of Charger fans on the team back then. And ever since then, I've just been following and getting closer and closer. And then as time went on, I started learning more about the Chargers of old, the Dan Fouts, the Charlie Joiners, the Lance Allworth. And the more I researched and the more I started learning about the team, the more I just started becoming a bigger and bigger fan, to the point where I'm just like a crazy fanatic.
I know, same here, dude. I literally a couple days ago, I watched the 50th anniversary of the Chargers documentary. It's so cool to see like those old games where literally there was like nobody in the stands, and they'd go over and meet everyone after the game. It was just absolutely crazy the way NFL used to be. And
that's the other thing I really love about the Chargers is how tight-knit that community used to be, right? You're talking about like Junior Seau, and he helped build the Junior Seau Sports Complex. You had the Seau's restaurant. The fans would be able to get gear signed after games. And, the more you learned about what the Chargers meant to the San Diego community, the more you just fell in love with that. I don't know what to call it.
Just the camaraderie, the kind of community spirit kind of thing, what they brought to everybody.
The community spirit, yeah.
No, for sure. I remember going to Seau's restaurant and being like, oh my God, is Junior Seau going to be at the restaurant tonight? Like, I just remember all that. I love being a part of that community. So
I never got to do that, man. I lived up 2 hours north, and at the time, I don't come from a big family of football fanatics. I'm kind of the only one. But it's stuff that, as you research and you learn more about the team, and it's storied history, you just start to fall in love with it.
100%. So, well, tell us about your podcast, man. Like, how you guys got started, and you guys do great work.
Yeah, thanks, man. So originally I became a writer probably about 2 years ago. I started my own blog. It was highvoltage.com. And I just started writing and posting to Facebook groups. And then at one point I got to join the Brawl Network, which went up in flames. I don't know if you know all about the Brawl Network.
We heard a little bit. Yeah, we heard a little bit about it.
Well, I'm not the alpha and the omega, but I did have the chance to start writing. And I met Dan Wilkenstein, who's over at the Chargers Unleashed, formerly Chargers Brawl. I met Zach Alfers through there. And after we all decided to leave the Brawl Network, I asked Zach to come and do this podcast with me, because it was something that I really wanted to do. Something that, I worked really closely with Dan over there, and I wanted to be a part of it. I wanted to do it on my own. So I asked Zach to do it with me when we decided to leave. And it just kind of took off from there. And it's been super exciting and fun. And, it's nice to have somebody just talk Chargers football.
I know. Same thing. That's what we needed. That's why we started this. Like I'm out in the middle of the country. I don't get to talk Chargers all the time. So like, all right, I get to meet with my brother and one of my best friends in the world, and we get to talk every week. It's like almost therapy for me, but people get to listen to it.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome. I do this basically for free. I mean, I don't make any money on the podcast. It's just you just chopping it up, and it's fun just to have those fan interactions through Twitter, which I wasn't even on the Twitter radar until 2 years ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, we got all of this community. It's awesome. It's fun.
Yeah.
And, it's cool to be able to, I feel like I'm giving back to, our Chargers fans by just sharing different points of view about different things.
100%. And to roll off of that, like you guys have put together a magazine that's coming out very soon or just recently came out, depending on when you listen to this. And I got a sneak peek. It's really awesome. I think you did some great stuff. Last season, the kind of development and where we are now, and you kind of go through these in really great chapters. So tell us a little bit, like looking back on what, when you were doing the research and stuff to put together this magazine.
Yeah, so this is actually my second magazine that I've written. The first one was the Master Bolt magazine that I came out with last year. Essentially, it was just a bunch of scouting reports on the top 53 players from last year.
Sweet.
And going from that, I wish that magazine was more story driven, right? I had maybe 15, 20 pages of like farewell to Phillip Rivers, talked a little bit about SoFi Stadium, and then really it just kind of went right into these scouting reports. And off of that, and based off some of the feedback I got off of that, I wanted to make this more like article, story-driven, something that's just fun to read. And that's one of the things I took away from last year to this year. And then this year, as I was going through that magazine and doing all this research, I got a PFF membership. So I have a lot of things from that. Plus, I've met some other Charger fans who provide different types of analysis. For one, Arjun Menon, who does a lot of the analytics-driven content with the Guilty as Charged podcast. I took some of his information and I kind of put it in my magazine, and just trying to find all the different types of content that I could put in. There's a lot more photos, a lot more pictures that I kind of self-edited. But as I'm learning through this, like I've talked to Zach. Zach was the one who helped edit my magazine. All the content was written by myself, but I couldn't, and it would not be nearly as good as this one specifically is without him editing all of that. So it's 60 pages. It's got everything from last year, free agency, last year draft, to game-by-game breakdowns of every single game, which was super painful to watch.
I know, I'm sure.
I watched every single game, and I really broke it down. And, what were the good things to take away from it? What were some of the bad things to take away from it? And then that kind of just parlayed into this year's offseason. If I could add something back into this magazine, it would be to be a bigger breakdown of our opponents for next year. I kind of just, it was at the very end of the magazine. I set a goal date for myself to have this finished by the middle of July, so that as training camp is starting, you have that content, because once the season starts, some of that, all that stuff in the beginning of the magazine is kind of no longer important, right?
Sure.
Because we're in a new season. But I think it's still a good read, and that's something I'll probably focus more on next year.
Yeah, it's definitely a good read. I read through it all. There's some really great stuff in there, and it's a little painful to look back some of those games and what that was all about. So, like, what was something that stood out when you went back and looked through those games?
Our special teams was so bad, man. It really, really was. You look at all of the missed field goals. You looked at the 3 block punts that we had, and really, if you look at everything that they over the last 10 years of special teams, because this isn't out of the ordinary. If you go back, I want to say like the 2010 or 11 season, we had the number 1 offense, number 1 defense, and missed the playoffs with terrible special teams.
Yep.
And then you look at what this Chargers coaching staff has put together. Darius Swinton, he seems like a very, very intelligent guy, just listening to his interview and the presence he brings. And then the Chargers went out and signed specific special teams contributors, veterans, not, just throwing your, bottom of your depth chart out on the field, but going and signing guys to play key roles like Ryan Smith, like Kyler Fackrell. And just looking at that from last year to this year and just putting all that analytics behind that, it's something really interesting to watch play out next year.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by what's going to happen with that special teams, because I feel like our offense and defensive, there's an upward trajectory. We're going in the right direction. Everything's moving. There's only one place to go but up with special teams. So I'm just curious how far up we're going to go, if any. And it's just exciting to see what the team's doing and the new personnel and the youth and all this new excitement surrounding the special teams.
Yeah, I'm also really excited to see how this new offense looks under Justin Herbert, because you're bringing Joe Lombardi, who's going to be playing lots of different sets. Every series they'll come out in a different formation, and then you're going to tie that in with the 49ers run game and a lot of the Raiders concepts too. It's going to be an interesting blend to see what this offense looks like next year. That's another thing I'm really looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, it's the excitement for this year. It's like,
yeah.
I haven't felt this as a Charger fan in a really long time.
I feel like I feel this every year, though. That's the issue.
You? Yeah.
Yeah,
like
I feel like every year.
Last year was exciting because we had like Hard Knocks and all that stuff when we were getting into it. But something about having Herbert now and knowing who he is and not second guessing the quiet guy that may not be able to lead a team. He is a quiet guy, but he does lead this team.
Yeah,
seeing our new coach, all this stuff is just so exciting for me.
Your guys' Sean Merriman episode where you guys interviewed him, how he's that quiet guy, but he just has a presence about him.
Yeah.
I'm excited, man. And I feel like I'm always set up for heartbreak. And it sucks. But I don't feel like that's this year.
Right.
And I feel like that every year, but I feel like it's going to be a lot better.
I'm with you, man. We're on the same page 100%. So how can everyone get their hands on the Shock Therapy magazine that you have right now?
Right. So I'm selling physical copies for $15 a piece. Typically what I'm doing is accepting Venmo, Zelle, PayPal, or Cash App. You can get in contact with me easiest through Twitter. You can also contact me on Facebook Messenger at The Master Bull if you guys are looking for me on Twitter. Tyler Lawrence is my name on Facebook. And then you just send me your address and I'll ship it to you. For the people who don't want a physical copy, and there are only 75 copies, I think I have about 40 left. I am also selling PDFs, which is just an email away. It's just $5. You send it to me. And I think that's how I sent you your magazine was through a PDF. So
yeah, it's amazing. And you're so generous in offering us 3 PDFs for our listeners. So I want to tell you now,
physical copies.
You're giving us, we're getting the good stuff.
Yeah, you guys are getting 3 physical copies. So I'll be sending those over to you guys. I don't know how you guys want to give those away, though.
Yeah, so we're going to, next week on Tuesday, if you're a part of our Ask Bolt fam and you submit a question, you're going to be in the running to get one of these 3 magazines. So bring your questions, bring the funny, and we'll have fun. But we appreciate, you doing all this. This is clearly a passion project, and it's a really great read. So I'm excited for other people to get eyes on it.
All right, man. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We got to do this again at some point soon, and let's stay in touch. And let's have a badass season.
Yeah, maybe we'll bring you on our podcast. We'll do some kind of mixture there. We'll do some kind of co-pod.
Let's cross it over, man. We're ready. We're game. Let's do it.
First win, all 5 of us get super drunk and talk about the win. How about that?
Let's do it. That sounds dangerous, and I'm absolutely in on that. So, all right. Thank you so much, Tyler. Really appreciate your time, brother.
All right, man. Thank you.
All right. Well, there you go, folks. Tyler Lawrence from Shock Therapy. Hey, thanks for coming by and talking with my man, Huggin Duggan. It's funny when I was listening to this interview, you mentioned being like the only football fanatic in the family. I was like the opposite. Like, I won't say the entirety of my family was a football fanatic, but definitely when we go to like big events, Christmases, Thanksgivings and stuff like that, that's all anybody could ever talk about was football. And I was just like, hey, the TV's on and I like watching TV, so I'm all about it. But so it's different for, everybody. And so interesting that was your situation. And then mentioning, having someone to talk to Chargers football about, when you say that, I know that that's kind of like what it has become for us here at the Charger Chat, but like, I don't really think about that as far as like, what my situation would be if I didn't have Kev Huggin Duggan, or if I didn't have Kyle the Coach Duggan. Like, who would I talk to Charger football about? And the reality is I would have nobody to talk to. So it is really nice, like, to have those people to talk to, and then to have that engagement on Twitter is such a big thing. I mean, nowadays, like, I can't imagine what it would be like, if this was, pre-Twitter times, pre-cell phone, Twitter group times. Like, man, how lonely it would be to be a Charger fan when you're not living within that closed vicinity. So, hey, what a time to be alive, folks, during the age of Twitter, and to be a fan of the Chargers and part of the Bolt fam. And awesome of Tyler Lawrence to give out 3 physical copies of that Shock Therapy magazine. You heard it. You heard Duggan say it. Specifically Huggin Duggan. You heard Huggin Duggan say it. Just send in a question for Ask Bolt Fam for next Tuesday's episode, I should say specifically. And everybody that submits a question is automatically entered to win a physical copy, not a PDF, folks. Physical copy. So we'll get that in your hot little hands, but you just got to ask a question. So be sure to send one in next week. And now it's time to look on over to the Coach's Classroom. Let's see what we got lined up for Coach's Classroom today. Hey, that's right, folks. It's time for another episode of Coach's Classroom. And this week, we've got somebody that actually sent us out a question relevant to Coach's Classroom. That is our previous fan focus, Terrell Cooper. Terrell, thank you for sending us this question. It goes something like this.
The team is reported to be using Mike Williams as the X receiver, similar to Michael Thomas. Plus, apparently, they will be putting Allen in the slot. What does all that mean? And can we see examples of our players in their new possible positions?
So good. Obviously that's not Terrell. We've heard what Terrell's voice sounds like. It is not Arnold, but I got to do it. So great question, Terrell. Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. What do we have to expect in this upcoming season?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I really do appreciate reaching out, specifically asking for Coach's Classroom so we can look at film and look at what you guys are doing. Right now, it's off season. I'm trying to help just give some information of what the basics are, of what kind of like the little more intricate details that you don't always notice when you're playing or when you're watching football. When we get into the season, we'll get into some more of the in-depth X's and O's, game specific, our team way more specific. But I think this is a great question. And I think it's something that the NFL is kind of, it's like a weird transition period in the NFL. As we know, pretty much every position is becoming positionless. You know, you want to draft that guy that can do everything. You want the Derwin James that can play safety and corner and the nickel and linebacker and edge rush. And you want to draft a receiver that can play on the outside, play in the slot, maybe even run the ball. You want to have these guys that can play all over the field. So this idea of an X, Y, and Z receiver is a great question. I think it's really relevant to our team. And it's probably misunderstood and kind of confused a little bit right now in watching the game and talking about the game. Just to start, I want to talk very basic, elementary, rudimental football rules.
Thank you.
So yes, absolutely. So as you look at this formation, this is our game against the Saints. You have three wide receivers, one here, and one here. So if you're talking actual X's and Z's and Y's, the way that they break it down is this is your X receiver down here at the bottom of the screen. He's isolated and alone. Then you have your Y, which would be in the slot, and your Z that is on the same side as the Y. So you have your X all alone. He's the single one all alone receiver. Your Z is on the opposite side. That's the strong side. And the Y is usually the slot, or what we know Y to be a lot is the tight end. So that would be, and then your running backs, you have X, that would be your H, and then you have your F or your fullback. So that is kind of, anytime you see a wide receiver all alone on one side, that is your X for that play. Anytime you see two wide receivers, you usually have your Z and your Y. Okay, so with that being said, just real brief, what all this looks like and how it adjusts plays. So what happens is this guy here is on the line of scrimmage. So he's on the ball. So anyone inside of him on the ball is an ineligible wide receiver. So this tackle here cannot go out and catch a ball. He's ineligible because he's covered up, because he's on the line. See, this receiver is off the line. So he's not covering up the last man on the line of scrimmage. But you have your Z out here. He's on the line. See how he's up a little bit farther?
Right.
So he's on the line. So this guy is ineligible. So in football, you always have to have 7 players on the line of scrimmage at all times.
Oh.
That way you have your 5 ineligible and you have your 5 eligible with your quarterback. So you have 5 guys that can catch the ball, 5 guys that cannot, and a guy that can throw the ball. That's every formation, no matter where they line up, no matter how weird it looks. That has to be the case, or else you get an illegal formation, you lose 5 yards, replay it down. Even if you throw a touchdown, it'll come back. So you have to have 7 guys on the line. You have 5 guys eligible, 5 guys ineligible. So in here, looking at letters, and that's where things get weird, is basically all you're saying in your X, Y, and Z is kind of what kind of routes they're going to run and how much you can get them open, right? So when you have your Y and Z, so this is Mike Williams actually in the Z with Jalen Guyton in the Y or the slot, and you have Keenan out here in the X all alone. Now, look at all this space you have because he's isolated on an island. He has all this room to work with to get a slant before he gets into the linebacker safety. He gets an outside move. That safety help is much harder because he's inside the box more, watching for running back or backside posts. So it just changes what kind of routes you're going to get when you're in this X position. Now, when you're in the Z and the Y, so you're on a 2 receiver side, this is where you get a lot of combination routes. It's a lot about timing. You have to work really well getting in and out of cuts. So it's a much different position when you're running the 2 receiver side versus the 1 receiver side. That's why primarily you see Mike in the X, quote unquote X, and you see Keenan with another guy, whatever that slot, that number 3, T. Billy, Jalen Guyton, whoever it might be, because they're working off each other. It's all timing. It's all route running. It's getting open in tight spaces because have 3 guys. This linebacker has to bump out, right? Because we have that other receiver out there. So you have more defenders in this small space. Another little thing, just as you're looking at it, right here, you're on, sorry about that. Right here, you're on the hash. So you have all this space over here from this hash all the way to here for Keenan to get open. So if I'm a defensive play caller, they're trying to isolate Keenan. They're trying to get him open. So that all of that goes into lining up these formations. Also, when you're the X, you're on the ball. This guy can come up and press you pretty hard. Like he can be up in your face and get hands on you quick. When you're the Z or the Y, you can be off the ball, right? Only one of you has to be on. The other one can step off. So you have a little bit more room for hand fighting. You can use your quick feet to get up and get around. So this is usually a big physical guy that runs isolation routes, and it isn't going to be jammed at the line of scrimmage.
Hey, Kyle, guess what? That's a split coverage, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah. You think it's 2 different? Yeah, you got an off corner and an on corner. That would be the thought.
I'm learning.
Nice. I like it.
Continue.
Round of applause.
Thank you. Round of applause.
Yeah, absolutely. So all of those things are kind of going on just to get the formation set up. This is what the offensive coordinator is considering when he puts what player where, right? So as you talk about Keenan playing the Y this year coming up, Keenan would be playing in here in the slot. So what he can run a bubble. He can run a lot of 7. Oh, that's not really a 7 route. He can run pretty much the whole route tree opens up, all those outside routes and inside breaking routes. From when you're outside at the top, X or Z, there's not a whole lot of outside breaking routes for you. It's mostly slants, hitches, overs, things of that sort. So that's to be said that's what those players should play. I think the NFL is becoming positionless because watch as this play starts to run, they shift out of what we have just talked about, and it's going to look a little bit different. So as they go, they shift. Hunter is going to go down to the line of scrimmage and become a real tight end. They checked into a different play. So now watch. You see those wide receivers moving at the top of the screen?
Mm-hmm.
As we talked about, if this guy's an eligible receiver, he can't be covered up, right? So these guys both have to back up off the line of scrimmage. Because if Mike Williams stayed on the line, that means that Hunter would not have been an eligible receiver. So as he comes up to the line, they have to get off or else he's covered up and ineligible. So now he's an eligible receiver since Mike backed up. But nothing changed on this side. But now you have in technicality, like giving him letters, you have your Z is still up here. This is your Y, your tight end. And then he becomes your H. And you may have already been that dictated because we knew Hunter was in the backfield. But all that to say, your letters of what position you are, it's very fluid in the NFL. You're looking for guys that can do everything. I mean, you have Austin Eckler, he's our H. Normally your halfback, but when he'll line up out here in the Z sometimes. They'll put him on an island and say, put your linebacker out there and I dare you to defend him. Yeah. So that's where things start to get really, really difficult for not only offensive play callers, it gets really confusing, but also for defensive coordinators. Like what do I tell my team in this one play where Austin Eckler's lined up in a Z? Do I take my linebacker out and cover him? Well, if we were in a zone, what zone do we now have? Does everyone have? Do we check right into a man-to-man because Eck is out there split out super wide? So it just gets really, really difficult to really have that, like that distinct X, Y, and Z. There's one other play that I wanted to look at, just kind of to show that this irrelevancy of a letter, like attaching to a position. Let me pull it up here for you guys.
So X is essentially in this concept is literally just on his own island and has more room to work. So that's what they're saying. Potentially.
Yeah. So that's what's hard is there's no absolute. So you could have a 4 wide receiver set where there's 2 wide receivers to each side.
Got it.
Right. So start right here. Before this motion starts, you have 2 wide receivers up top and you have 2 down below. So, and even more so, this guy here would be normally your X. That's Mike Williams. He's off the ball because your H or your F is up on the ball. So it all becomes very diluted and who's what. And that's what the NFL is trying to do, to be like, look, what are you going to do? What are you going to do when I put Mike Williams in the slot? What are you going to do when I put Austin Eckler out at the Z? What are you going to do when I put Keenan at the X? And once you find that matchup you like, you run that formation and you attack it until they adjust. So that's what the NFL is now. It's just continue moving around, shifting guys, motion. We play the Chiefs twice a year. We see how many motions they're doing, moving people around, trying to get the matchup that they like, right? So right now we have 2 wide receivers to each side. So you would say here that this is Hunter Henry. He's our Y. He's our tight end. And you have, I think this is Keenan. He would be considered your Z up top. But then as the play starts to develop, he's going to motion down. And in essence, you have Hunter Henry playing your X, right? Because he's the only wide receiver up top. He's all alone on an island. He's not out past the numbers, but he's on his own, right?
Right.
So that should, in technicality, be your X. This would be your Z, which is even weirder because now he's off the ball because you had your H up on the ball. And then you have Keenan coming across playing like an F. Like it's just like letters and numbers and positions. It all becomes a big Mod Podge as these motions and trying to set up matchups. So it's all really just about what route they're running and these meshes and all of those things going on all at the same time. So that is my answer. That's my really long, confusing answer to your question.
Yeah. It's basically convoluted in the idea that like, oh, he's this X position. Like, look at him go, Michael Thomas style. Like, it is, but it isn't. And don't get too hyped up on the X.
Exactly. Don't buy in so hard to, oh shoot, Keenan's gonna play Y this year, because he might play some in that slot type number 2 receiver stuff. Then sometimes he might be back on the X, and who knows? We see him in the backfield. That's what the NFL is. It's you're not gonna say this guy's gonna line up here every play the whole game, and this guy's going to line up here every play the whole game, because then the defense can easily scheme, and Gus Bradley would be a great defensive coordinator. But that's just not that's not what the NFL is anymore. It's so fluid, and there's so much movement and so many different, even the same formation, if you lined up guys in different spots, it's still a different formation because your defense has to adjust to it.
So it's just like our coaches are talking about, like getting the right matchups, and this is all the matchup bases, getting all this complicated and moving people and motioning and getting them, against the guy that may not be as good as the other guy that was originally covering him on the other side of the field. Right.
So as you look at this play, if when that motion happens, just real quick, let me go back and see if anything happened with this corner, right? So as the motion happens, the corner is now forced to run to the other side of the field.
Yeah, he's on him.
Right? Because if he stayed, then you have a corner matched up with Hunter Henry. Which you're going to throw to him all day long, corner on Hunter. Yeah. So you're trying to create that matchup. If he goes across, now you see all the safeties talking. They're saying, check man, whatever their term is, because now what zone? If they were in cover 3 and he was supposed to have the flat, if this guy had the flat, he had deep third, and now you have another defender over here, you can't just stay in those zones. So either now they're having to check out of their zones and adjust their zones, or they just check into man. And then you know what you have, and you know what your matchups are. So it's just constant and fluid, and this to say this guy's an X and this guy's a Z, that might be what they are better at sometimes, but that's not what they're going to play the entire game. It'll be a continuous motion of it.
How quickly do you think it changed from being what it was that Gus Bradley was so good at and touted for to what you just described as being this kind of fluid design?
Well, football is just much more finesse now. It's not, I have Adrian Peterson, so I'm going to run the ball 40 times and we're going to beat you.
Mm-hmm.
That's no longer what it is. With the way that we protect the quarterback and the pass interference, the not being able to hit receivers, all of those things evolved the play calling game as well. Because as a play caller, if I know I'm going to get a PI on 20% of the plays, I'm going to keep throwing the ball deep because I know that I'm going to get that yardage. So I think all of those things that the NFL has done has shifted what play callers want to do. So it's been over the last, we've watched it happen over the last 10 years that this is where the NFL is now. It's how do we create matchups in the passing game, not how can we get as much big bodies on the field that want to block.
Nice.
Very, very good, man.
Love it.
Good work, Coach.
Yeah, thank you, Coach, for explaining the X, the Ys, the Zs, the H's, the F's, the 7s, all of it. You've given us some stuff to chew on here during this downtime of the off season. We really do appreciate it. And folks, again, if you've got questions that require some visual aid, send them on over to us because Coach will just break it down just like that and show it to you. Not just tell it to you. He's going to show it to you exactly what it is that you need to be looking for. So excellent. All right. Well, there you go, folks. Another Coach's Classroom in the books. Count it. It's done. It's in, ready, and raring to go. Hopefully you all learned a little something. Lord knows I did. I learned something every stinking week. When I have somebody like Kyle, the Coach Duggan, to be able to break it down for me, I count my lucky stars. So that's pretty much going to do it for us here at Charger Chat. But before I go, folks, don't forget, go to chargerchat.com. My man Hugged Duggan has put a lot of time and effort into building this website, and the piece de resistance of this website is that we have a shop. We've got merchandise, folks. We've got shirts, we've got hoodies, we got stickers, and we've got more, coming, but we didn't want to inundate you guys too much with too much merchandise. So, we've got the basics there right now. Go check it out. The shirts are awesome. Again, never in a million years would I ever expected to be selling something that has my face on it. Like it blows my hair back. So, or what little hair that I have. So it's all blown back. But check it out, chargerchat.com. Get yourself some merchandise. It looks awesome. It feels great. And you're going to look so spiffy wearing this stuff. So check it out. And again, that's going to do it for us here at Charger Chat for this week. Folks, don't forget to bolt up, because we're ready for any squad, any place. Okay, love you, bye.
And now, a word from our sponsors. All right, everybody. It's time to learn the alphabet, Coach Duggan style. Ready? Here we go. F, H, Y, and Z. Now I know who can catch the ball. Now our brains are not so small. Thanks for joining us on Learning the Alphabet like Kyle the Coach Duggan. Next week, we'll learn how to count timeouts. See you then.